you could do that. Sure. And then in your mind, you're like, you guys did 75, I did 78. Sure, I took the 2-3 days because I wasn't feeling well. I think that gives you a sense of accomplishment where your friends can't even question you in that spot.
I love it. I will throw 3 on the back end. Yeah. That's a great suggestion.
That's what I would do. Just throwing that out there. Yeah. All right. Last night, you had the Boston Celtics do what the Boston Celtics do, which is win games in the regular season against really good teams. Good teams, I guess. And the Phoenix Suns 127-112. And their 2 stars were stars last night. Jaylen Brown's been unbelievable recently. He had 37 last night. Jason Tatum had 26 in this game.
Them boys were cooking last night.
As they've been all season long, 52-14, their record. And Kevin Durant last night, 9 of 19 for the Suns, 20 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. Plus minus, if you buy into that, the score of the game when you're on the court was a minus 17 for KD last night. Not ideal. And there's been this narrative developing over the last few weeks here about Durant and how we approach Durant. We sat here with Austin Rivers on our show, ESPN NBA analyst, last week talking about the LeBron and Steph era and how the distant third, but still a great player, is Kevin Durant. And JJ Redick, ESPN NBA analyst, on his podcast, Old Man in the Three, had this to say about KD.
Whatever happens the rest of Kevin's career, we're going to look back in like 10 or 15 years and be like, why the did we spend all this time with all the bull discourse and not just appreciate literally one of the greatest basketball players to ever play this game? Yeah. I really he's literally one of the greatest players ever. And we spend too much time on the bull instead of just appreciating his night-to-night greatness.
Nobody is questioning Kevin Durant's greatness. I don't understand where J.J. Redick is coming from. KD is a top 20 player all time, and that's being conservative. That's not even debatable. The question is his competitive greatness, being at his best when his best is required. Like, there are levels to it when it comes to the Hall of Fame, and we know undoubtedly KD will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. But when it comes to the greatness, when it comes to comparing him to his peers over the last decade of basketball, how does he stack up? And right now, KD is looking funny in the light. I mean, think about it. He's got Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, 2 guys that can absolutely fill it up. Brad Beal led the league in scoring once upon a time. Devin Booker scored 70 points in a game once upon a time. Like, these guys are big-time scorers. And yet, this is a team that we're questioning whether or not they could actually make it to a real playoff series. They might be relegated to play-in status, but this is more of the same for Kevin Durant post-Golden State. Think about how disastrous it was in Brooklyn. You got Kyrie Irving, the best ball handler of all time. You got James Harden, former MVP, multiple-time scoring champ, and you won 1 playoff series? 1? I don't think it's unfair to scrutinize what we've seen from Kevin Durant in the way of team success. I just think that's the place that we're at with him. He's so good that we're not judging him based on his own individual statistics anymore. We judge him on overall team success. And I'm sorry, Eb, but I got to say it. The further we get removed from the Golden State Warriors Kevin Durant days, the more the shine on those trophies comes off for KD individually. I don't know that we've seen a player that we view as a top 20 guy do less with more than what we've seen from Kevin Durant. He played with 2 MVPs in Oklahoma City in James Harden and Russell Westbrook. He played with Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, the best modern-day dynasty post the Chicago Bulls. We're talking about him playing with James Harden and Kyrie Irving, and now Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. I think it's absolutely on the board to question what we've seen from Kevin Durant. I was talking with the guys in the control room before the show, and Pat Costello framed it perfectly. He said Kevin Durant is the NBA version of Aaron Rodgers, one of the most talented individuals we've ever seen in the sport. And yet it doesn't equate to overall team success as often as it should.
You know, what's hard for me on that comparison is, you're doing it from an on-field, on-court perspective. I no longer think of Aaron Rodgers on the field. I literally cannot. And Kevin Durant, to his credit, only cares about basketball. Kevin Durant, wants to play basketball and go home and not talk to anybody. He's from an off-field, opposite. On-field, you're talking about the amount of talent, the amount of opportunities. Rodgers had 1 million opportunities and did not get over that hump. I'm never going to take anything away from those Warriors teams. I can't do it because of how great they were.
No, I'm not. Here's the thing. I'll never disqualify a championship. They won the championship. He was Finals MVP. I give him that credit. But there was already leadership in a culture that was put in place. Kevin Durant just had to show up and hoop. But that's not what we normally require from the greatest players. Like our greatest players, we're looking at them to be tone setters. We're looking at them to establish a culture that leads to sustained success. And Kevin Durant has not been able to do that.
Well, we don't look at him the same way as we look at LeBron and Steph, and I think we have to acknowledge that.
We don't look at him the same way as we look at any of the all-time greats that are playing right now. Like, we don't look at him the same way as we look at Jokic. I don't. Like, think about what Jokic was able to establish with the Denver Nuggets. This guy's on his way to winning his third MVP.
But if he doesn't win a championship this year, you're going to hold it against Jokic?
No, I'm not going to hold it against Jokic because he's already done it.
Right.
In a situation where he established it from the ground up. There was no championship culture in Denver to speak of before Jokic got there. He built that. Like, Kevin Durant didn't do it. Like we've seen it with LeBron James with the LA Lakers and the Cleveland Cavs. We've seen it with Giannis.
Steph with the Warriors,
with Giannis,
for sure.
with the Milwaukee Bucks. We've seen it with Steph and the Golden State Warriors. We've seen it time and time again with the all-time greats, guys that we would view as top 20 players. And Kevin Durant, he doesn't have that on his resume, and that's the missing piece. And until that happens, until something about that changes, we're always going to question that level of greatness, like being able to have those intangibles that separate you from the others.
And while it's fair to point out all of those things, I do think that that's why Kevin Durant's greatness is underappreciated, because it always comes with qualifiers. We can never just look at those championships and what he accomplished and say, oh, he was the best player on that team. There's always people that were going to say, well, that was pre-existing before him. And he had to go to that team in order to win. And as you pointed out, what did he do after that with a lot of talent around him? Nothing.
Not only what he did after that, but what they did after that, too.
Yeah, the team
They
success.
went on and won a championship without him.
Yes.
Like, the further we get removed from those two chips that KD won, the more we realize that he needed the Golden State Warriors more than the Golden State Warriors needed him.
True. But just from an individual perspective, I think all of that discourse takes away from the greatness that we witnessed from him from an individual perspective. And while it's completely fair and right to bring all of that up, I do think that there's a part of us that when all this is said and done and we look back on it, we will say we probably didn't appreciate him enough in real time for what we saw night in and night out.
I agree with that, but I totally agree with that because I think he's great. And I think that, like, CeCe's right. You can't look at Kevin Durant and say this was his team from beginning to end and they won a ton. But also, he is great. So let's fast forward then. Let's say, like, one of the things that Smalls always says about herself, which I appreciate and I think she's right, is she has an amazing sense of self. She walks in day one, she says, I am clumsy as could be, and then she has a black eye to start the show, right? Like, we get it. Let's say Kevin Durant says, you know what, I'm going to give you a sense of self here. I know who I am. I'm an all-time great. Chris Canty said I'm a top 20 player of all time.
No question.
But I'm not the guy because of who I am. It's just the way I am. I'm not the guy to come in here and change a culture and be the number one in terms of leader. I need someone else with me, or I got to go somewhere else. Would you rip him for that?
He deserves to be ripped.
But I'm saying if he said right now, I want to go to Milwaukee to play with Giannis because I know it's his culture that's set, or I want to go to the Lakers to play with LeBron because he sets the culture, or pick a team. Right, or I want to go to Boston doesn't have it the way that we're. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
If he says that, aren't we going to rip him? Because then it's like, hey, you're going to acknowledge who you are. You know you're not the leading actor in terms of the culture setting, and then we're going to say, well, you never set a culture, and you never won a championship on your team.
Well, not even just setting the culture. How about holding a teammate accountable? Like, think about it. There was no accountability in Brooklyn. And when you're the best player in the NBA, that's a part of the job description.
And that is what will go down, I think, is the biggest mistake of this guy's career, is that he aligned himself with Kyrie Irving.
And that's fair. That's fair to be critical of that. But you're still talking about OKC teams that came up short.
Yeah.
They were so young, though, to be fair.
You can say they're so young, but they came up short. They got to the finals and got smoked.
Yes.
Like, and those are two guys that went on to win MVPs in their career. Like, you know, I can't sugarcoat it when it comes to KD. Like, at some point, you have to be able to dictate the complexion of games consistently enough that allows your team to do the high-level winning. And this guy comes up short. Like, think about it. It's like a quarterback saying, oh, I'm just going to go to this team, but I'm not going to worry about being a leader. I just want to throw the football. No, we don't accept that.
No.
So why should we accept that from Kevin Durant when it comes to parachuting into a franchise and saying you're just worried about scoring your 25, 30 points every night?
And obviously we don't have the list in front of us, but I wonder if there's anyone else on that top 20, top 25 players of all time list that you referenced that we can say that about, that hasn't been the clear-cut number one guy culture setter.
That's played with, what, 3 other MVPs? That's played with 3 other MVPs?
I mean,
He's probably singular on that list.
The amount of players that Shaq and LeBron have played with that are in the Hall of Fame are ridiculous. That said, they all won championships.
They won multiple
championships with multiple teams.
Yes.
And but I'm saying, like, when you're
Shaq
thinking
has,
about.
what, 4 titles?
Yeah,
3 with Lakers, 1 with Miami. Yeah.
4 titles. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying.
Right, but that's where it's odd because the guy that bounces around like Kevin Durant has, like that has played with as many Hall of Famers as he has more titles. And by the way,
listen, man, look, say what you want about LeBron got more out of Kyrie Irving.
Oh no, I'm not. There's no argument there.
There's no question about it. I mean, what's going on with the Clippers right now? The Clippers are getting more out of James Harden than Kevin Durant and Brooklyn ever did.
Okay, I'm going to put you to the fire on this.
I'm just sitting there thinking about it. Like, these are pieces that KD had with him, and those guys have thrived in other situations.
Whose career would you rather have, Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard?
Kawhi Leonard.
Kawhi Leonard will not be looked at as a better player all time than Kevin Durant.
No, if he wins a championship this year, I think that changes it a little bit.
Yes, it does.
But here's the problem. Kawhi Leonard is closer to winning a championship with one of the guys that was jettisoned from Brooklyn that KD was playing with than Kevin Durant himself is, with another situation that he has made in Phoenix.
And by the way, I think, unfortunately for the NBA, and I love the NBA, unfortunately for the NBA, overreacting to regular season games is ridiculous because of what we've seen in the past. But here's the thing. But the Suns are in the play-in.
Yeah, that's my point.
The problem.
And the Celtics punched their ticket. They clinched a postseason spot last night. Like, we don't know that the Suns are going to make it to the playoffs.
No, and that's why I'm saying that this is a fair conversation.
That's what makes this relevant.
And think about this, just quickly here. Kevin Durant, Luka, LeBron, Steph. That's your play-in the Western Conference right now.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.